And we are live. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm Robert Michiels, your host. You're joined tonight by Jeff Goin. He is in the mountains as we speak. He just landed right there where he landed. He took his gear off, and he is live with us here. He's in a secret location. I can't tell you where. Also, Sean, one of the moderators, Neil is with us too somewhere. I don't know where he's at. He's hiding. And we're going to have a great show. So this is Jeff Goin 2.0. Last time there was a little bit of delay. Jeff is a real pilot, so he was flying some aircraft, and he flies for an airline I don't want to disclose, but he had to beat one of the passengers. You can figure out what airline he works for. I'm just kidding. That's not true. That's not true.
You wanted mushrooms with that? I'll give you mushrooms.
You want a happy flight. Before we start the show, I do want to say we have special news, and it's great news for the show. We finally have a sponsor. And so tonight our show is sponsored, and until further notice, our show is going to be sponsored by Para Products. Larry and Chris put together a great little store with a bunch of custom made, I want to say, orange products for putting stuff sacks. They've got riser covers. They've got prop covers. They've got all kinds of stuff. So go check out the link in the description for the details in that, and buy some gear from them and support your local American-made goodness.
And orange. That way you can't lose it.
That's right, and it's orange.
It's harder.
Yeah, I think it's great. I went scoped out their website, and we'll put a couple links and whatnot, and we'll talk a little bit about some of their gear later on. And they're going to do some giveaway stuff. They talked to me about supporting the show. They're doing that, and we're excited. So more exciting than that, we've got Jeff Goin here with us. Jeff is he is actually the author, and did I want to say, I think what Phil Russman said was like 99.9% of the work to put together the book, and I'll let him fill in the blank, but it was the PPG Bible that all of us know about and have read, and has helped many pilots to get up in the air and fly safely. So I want to give the platform to you, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Jeff Goin 2.0. The show is 2.0. You can hear
all right,
them
well,
cheering.
thanks so much. Yeah, I wish it was that I had just landed. I did just land here, but unfortunately it was from the motorhome. I did want to fly here. This is Snoqualmie, I think is the name of it. It's a gorgeous area. Just did some paramotoring yesterday. And it's funny how when I'm out there flying, I'm thinking about some of those things that if I ever screw them up, people are going to say, hey, what did you say there in chapter 24 about that, huh? I was out in horse country, so fly high, avoid ticking off the horses.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the book was, I'm sure I covered the basics of it last time, but it was a labor of love. They all are labors of love because there's so much work that goes into it. And as I think I'd said last show, it was Dennis Pagan. I went to Dennis Pagan. He's the guy that got me to do it. I wasn't planning on writing a book, but when Dennis said he wasn't going to write it, then I decided it needs to be done. So I did it. And there's a lot of misinformation that needed to be corrected. There's still a lot that I'm learning. And that's why it's in the 5th edition. I'm working on putting the 5th edition into a PDF format. But as I'm doing that, I'm also coming across things that, yeah, I need to update that, don't I? Or I come up with ideas on graphics that I could improve. Like, for example, just recently, I don't have much about angling the prop. Torque is a big deal. In our sport, torque causes quite a few crashes of varying intensity from training to experienced pilots. And you'll see a lot of, let's say, not quite so accurate information on the subject. That's a little frustrating. Like, for example, one of them that I loved, I don't want to go too much into the details to bore people, but I remember hearing from someone who said talking about torque that, well, this is a gear drive unit. It doesn't have torque. Remember that?
Yeah.
I think we touched on that last time. But so one of the mentions of correcting torque is angling the prop. Okay, that would work. But how would you illustrate what actual effect it does? Because it's easy to get confused about, well, the prop twists your body this way, but if your body goes that way, that makes the wing, so the body goes left, forces you left, and the wing goes right. Well, that whole thing can be a little confusing. So how would you illustrate this bit about angling the prop? Number one, how would you angle the prop? You have to move the motor over to the right a little bit because you don't want to just twist the motor from its mount, or now the thrust line moves with it. That's no good. So you'd move the motor to the right, twist it to the left, and now you've angled the prop. Well, what effect does that have? So it pushes your body to the right, indeed, but there's more to it because the thrust line is not exactly between the risers. It'll actually cause you to twist just a little bit. How do I illustrate that? And that's what while I was working on getting PPG Bible 5, I thought I need to come up with an illustration of that, and I came up with one. Think about this. Think about if you stuck your propeller on a long shaft out the back, and then on that shaft, you angled the propeller to the left. So now what is it doing? That propeller, when it pushes, it's angled, it's going to twist you powerfully to the left. And everybody can see that. So that's how you would illustrate it if you go at the limits.
Nice.
So that's why these things wind up in edition 5. Because I remember when I wrote 1, well, not much is going to change, is it? Right. Yeah, we see how that went. I mean, like an interesting observation, and this is another change that's going to be in 6. 6, by the way, is years off. If for no other reason that I'm not going to scrape myself off the pavement again for a while. But I lost my train of thought. The propeller torque, there's some illustrations, edition 5. I don't know. Anyway, there'll be a lot of work. Let's put it that way.
So one of the guys that's on the show a lot, his name's Woody Gamertag, Matt Woodworth. You'll have to meet him at some point because he's a flying madman. And he made the statement, and I agree with him. He said about going to a PDF. He said, isn't that going to affect the money aspect of it? And he made the statement. He said, I want him to make money. If he has an incentive to keep it current and to keep it awesome, then the community gets something awesome. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I remember what I was thinking about now too. So when I go to a PDF format, it'll cost the same. It's not going to be $10. So, what you're paying for is the time. And that's not going to change. And I appreciate that sentiment because it is a lot of work. If I just want to make money, I'll go fly the Boeing. And that's not too bad either. In fact, I just got done with training, and we did slow flight and stalls in the Boeing.
What?
That was cool. Yeah.
Are you serious?
In the simulator.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Here, watch this, guys.
Hold your seats, guys. Check this out.
Yeah, right. Oh, it was amazing because we did the full stall. This is in the simulator, going into John Wayne Airport in California. And where the stall happened was at 1,000 feet. So we were on the approach, autopilot on, and the drill was to let it go by all the warnings that you get, and you get a lot of warnings. And then when it fully stalls, as in it starts to brake and you're descending and you can't control it, now recover. And wow, that's interesting because there's no way around. You got to get a face full of green before you can do anything about it. So that was interesting. But what I was going to say before had to do with harnesses. Have you noticed that nearly all paramotors have gone to those swing arms? It's kind of interesting. Yeah. I mean, you look at all of the models that are out there, all the ones that are being sold, probably 90% of them have the swing arms that are similar to the mini plane that go down, so your arms go in them, and then they come up, and your hook in points are up about here to give you good weight shift. but they're not too low to where the thrust forces you back and forth. So that's what I was going to say. That's going to be another change when it comes time, that the illustrations are going to change to emphasize that style more.
Very good. So you're on, what did you say? It's number 5?
5 is out there right now, and
wow.
yeah, that'll last us for 4 years. So we got a while, but that's good because we have other ideas of what we want to do. In fact, one of the ideas is, and maybe it'd be interesting to run it by the listeners and get feedback on it. It's to do the same quality treatment on a series of beginner videos for, I would call it Paramotor Essentials or something like that, Powered Paragliding Essentials. And the idea is it's similar to how chapters 1 through 6 in the book are meant to take someone from never having seen a paramotor to having first flights.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and there's some good videos out there already on kiting. So I'm not trying to compete in a sense, but what I want to do is I want to bring condensed, narrated quality with animation to the project. So you'd have another element of it would be, well, how do you choose an instructor? How do you choose gear? Because there's some pretty important choices to make.
Yeah.
To the point where it's a life or death decision.
Right.
So this and these things are all in the Paramotor Bible, in the Powered Paragliding Bible, but I think in video they might have more impact. We'll see. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Right now I'm in the recovery phase, and it's been the longest recovery phase from the instructor book.
Recovery. Yeah. It's abuse on your brain.
It is abuse. That instructor book took a piece of me that I'm still now trying to get back. It was a combination. The instructor book came out right after 5, and 5 took us by surprise because we ran out of 4s before we expected. So everything was going along swimmingly with 4s, and this is a good problem. Then the sales went boop. It's like, we're gonna run out. We're gonna run out. Oh no, we ran out. And then I had software problems, and
no kidding.
It was interesting. If you ever want to get something called shingles. If you ever want to get shingles, my recommendation is get into this kind of business, where this publishing thing. So,
did you call up Phil Russman about doing the video aspect?
I haven't. I think he's got something that's a little more lucrative right now that he's working on, and Phil is flying the friendly skies. Yeah. You were talking about a wild man. Phil is a wild man. He's out flying in Europe, flying all over the place. In fact, I'm hoping in November to drag Phil on a little paragliding trip down to Mexico.
Oh, nice. He's supposed to join us tonight. He said 6:30 is the soonest he can get on. I think he's driving.
Okay.
Fighting California traffic.
Yeah, but you know why he's driving? He's probably coming back from a flying site. So turn your sympathometer down just a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. Is that him texting? No. He needs to join us. This will be the second time that he missed a Jeff Goin show.
Do you know what he's done to me several times? And I can't say where he's done this from. And I probably shouldn't admit to this. He'll probably get mad. What? But I'll get a telephone call, and there's no mistaking that 20-mile-an-hour breeze.
Yeah.
So he's out there soaring someplace and who knows where. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Yes.
Yeah. Where are you? I'm just out there.
Yes, that is Phil. Has
he done that to you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. And he always has this really blasé attitude. You can tell because when he's at home, it's like, hey, Rob. Okay, that's how he answers the phone. But when he calls me in the air, or I call him and he's in the air, he'll answer sometimes, and he'll go, hey, Rob. I swear. Yeah, and he he logged on to the show a couple shows back while he was in the air, but he couldn't figure out how to do the video aspect of it, which is hilarious to me because he's pretty tech savvy, but he couldn't figure it out, and he's just flying around, and it was fun.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't think he would even be interested. You know, the problem with video is that, of course, DVD's on the way out, and what we're going to do it online, and we're going to do DVD. Some people want to have a DVD. That's fine. But if we do it, the other thing about DVD is it's low quality.
Right.
720 by 480. So
it's going away too. I said something
away.
to my son. I'm like, we can watch it on DVD, and I'm like, my son said something like, "What's a DVD?" I'm like, dude, you serious?
Yeah.
Or
the other question is, yeah, right, tapes. The other question is, why?
Why? Yeah, why?
Why would you watch it on? Yeah.
I got a MacBook Pro, and it does not have a disk drive.
Most of them don't. I don't think computers have come with built-in disk drives for a long time now, for a couple of years. But, you know, that'll be an option. You'll be able to watch it online. And we'll see. I'll do it probably in a 4K workflow, and that allows you to do a few more things. But if we do that, I think there would be a lot of value in having a completely unbiased presentation on not just the learning to fly parts, but the how to buy gear, what goes into it. I mean, you've got all the sellers saying these things, and they tend to be, what's the word? Highly promotive of their own gear. There's a better word for that. But I have a feeling people might like that. They'd certainly get something from it. I'd like them to know. Like, what about wings? You know, that we have this trend towards small wings, and is that good? What are the trade-offs? Because you make trade-offs. You buy a small wing. There's some really cool things you can do with it. I mean, until you get, but is it just a small wing, or is it a speed riding wing? You know, there's a big difference. One's made to go down, another's made to just go fast, really.
Right.
So,
a question came up in the chat, and this is from Todd. He goes Yankee and SC1. He said, "How much time does Jeff spend with keeping up with the social media side of PPG?"
Not too much. I tell you, the one group, the Paramotor group, I have gotten a lot of information from. For one thing, negative people I just unfollow. There are people who are in the sport that I like, but you know, if they tend to be negative, I'll probably just unfollow them so I never see that stuff. But like, for example, the polls are really quite valuable. When I was working on the latest edition of the book, I did some polls and asked some questions and got really good responses on some things. So I don't keep up with them so much as I will use them as a resource. And they're valuable for that. I mean, you know, you get some of the same questions. Like if someone says, "Hey, I'm just starting this sport, what motor should I get?" Well, why would anybody who's been in the sport for a while engage in that unless they're a seller? Because the poop show that follows is not really worthy of our time. But
well played.
To each of their own, of course. So I think they're a resource, and if we keep them as that, they're valuable.
By the way, Woody Gamertag owes $10 to the Patreon. Just want to put that out there.
Okay.
Yeah, because he cussed on the show and he never paid.
Oh.
He's in the chat right now, yeah.
Okay. I caught myself.
Here's a question from an Atheon. He asked, could you ask Mr. Goin about trims versus speed bar safety and why more pilots don't use the speed bar?
Hold that for 1 second.
Okay.
Hold that question. Matt, this is Jeff. Jeff, this is Matt. This is who I was just talking about.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Jeff. I met Jeff before, actually. I go by Woody.
Okay, cool.
He totally dissed me.
I did?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, would I?
I absolutely would. Yeah.
Oh no!
Just let me know if you want me to mute him, Jeff. I can do that.
So the question about speed bar and trimmer is a fascinating one. Are you familiar with the system that uses a speed bar trimmer interconnect, where
Yeah, the PK system, right?
competition wings now have this, and it's where the speed bar has all the action of the trimmers. So it does both. It lowers the leading edge and it raises the rear risers in a controlled way. So the problem with the answer to that question is that it depends so much on wing. Now, unfortunately, I can't see on screen what my, I'm going to try. Oh, there I am. There we go. All right. So here's your basic wing. And in general, in the past, on a reflex wing, if you put the trimmers up, you would do this. It raises the back of the wing into a reflex shape. And so the center of pressure is up here on the A's and B's dramatically, and it makes them very collapse resistant. So that's what happened when you put the trimmers up. And then when you put the speed bar fast, the whole thing typically just lowered and you would go faster that way. Because, of course, now the person, the wing does that, and then the person swings out. Now you're just, the motor pushes, and now you're doing this. The motor's way out here, and you're going really fast. You got the reflex in there. All right, so that's a traditional reflex wing when Michael Campbell-Jones came out with it some time ago, and his wings are still, as I understand it, mostly that way. But other manufacturers have changed that paradigm. And so now, frequently, they'll say, well, you can use the speed bar. And if you look in the Powered Paragliding Bible, in the last, I don't remember what chapter is, but it goes into this subject pretty in depth. And I put risers from a Doberman, which has the STI, the speed bar trimmer interconnect, so I could show all of what happens. And some wings, like the Doberman, when you push the speed bar, that shape stays the same, and it simply lowers the angle of incidence. So here's your body hanging below it. It just does this. See that?
Interesting.
Speed bar just does that. So the key answer is you do have to consult the manual. Consult the manual and consult the competition pilots if they're flying that wing, or at least the highly experienced guys, the team pilots that have flown that wing to its maximum potential. And the reason why I like to use those guys is they've probably done a tight turn and they've flown through their wake on speed bar. They know how it's going to behave. Those are great resources. The manual, number one, because some of them will say, for example, that, hey, no problem, full speed bar and some brakes. Other manuals, like, for example, I think it's Ozone. No, it's Dudek. My bad. They have in their manual you should see the rock seat that I'm sitting on. So sorry, I'm squirming, but I've made it's kind of comical. This is my seat here in the rocks because it reduces the noise. But anyway, so you'll know about the squirming.
We want to see the RV before you leave.
Oh, okay. All right. Uh-oh. I don't have image.
There you go.
Can you see me? Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So they have, in the Dudek manual, they have this diagram that shows about using speed bar and brakes together. And they show it as increasing risk, which is a great way to show it. It's not that you can't do it. It's that you need to know when to do it. On their wing, if you're accelerated with, let's just say speed bar, then you probably don't want to use the brakes if it's bumpy. If it's not bumpy, you can use some brakes and you won't be adding that much risk, but you'll be adding some risk. Same thing with trimmers. So it just depends on the wing, because if you have a wing where you let the trimmers up and it goes into reflex mode and you're flying that way and you're in turbulence and you're using a little bit of brake, that really destabilizes it. I don't know if I mentioned this last week. I have a test. I have a test that I do when we were filming for Master PPG 1. Bill Heener, probably the best kiter that I know, he could collapse that wing on cue by simply letting up on the brakes. Oh, it was accelerated, trimmers fast. Letting the wing go forward, unloading it a little bit, and pulling a little bit of brake. Now, if you pulled a whole lot of brake down, it wouldn't collapse. But if you pulled maybe half brake down, it would collapse on cue. So you can imagine in flight how that would go. When you get in turbulence, the thing about turbulence, it's not just that it folds the wing down, it's that it unloads you a little bit, and now the wing is that much more susceptible. So that combination of accelerated, unloaded a little bit, and not really getting good pressure in the brakes, if that's the way the wing should be flown, that's a bad combination. And that's why some of them, it's really important to use the tip steering. But then how about that one model of wing where I took this model, and I don't remember what it is. I don't want to diss the wing. Everybody loves the wing. I like the wing. But I was looking at using it for competition. And they had a team pilot that used this wing for competition, and you had to use the Stabilo steering. Well, Stabilo goes to the very tips, not the back of the wing at the trailing edge, but the very tips. So it's frequently on the B lines, and it's not very effective. And I went to their team pilot and I asked him, so do you use the Stabilos? And he said, yeah. Well, how do you do the turns? I use a lot of them and I know when to pull them. Like, okay, I'm not that good, so I'm not going to fly that wing for competition anyway. So it really depends. That's a really long answer to your question, but it's kind of because it needs to be.
That's incredible.
Hey, Jeff, one of the questions in the chat, and I know this typically comes from a lot of beginning pilots too, but Fly Swamper had a question where talking about, I forget exactly what it said, talking about having trims out and being on speed bar. Now, when you read it in a manual, they're talking about fully accelerated. And for a lot of newer pilots, it gets kind of confusing because you're thinking fully accelerated mean trims all the way out. So he was asking if you can go into that a little bit more. Like,
well,
out.
Again, we kind of have to address more traditional wings and reflex wings, and reflex wings where they say it's semi-reflex, which, some people, they just really bristle with that term. But my comeback to that is, okay, so you don't like semi-reflex, I get it, but you got trimmers on the wing, right? It's more of a traditional paraglider when you have the trimmers in, and then when the trimmers are out, you've got a full reflex profile. What's it in the middle? Another word for that seemed to be semi-reflex. So anyway, that is to say it's going to depend on the wing. Do you have a traditional wing? If you have a traditional wing, then it's really all just degrees of risk. If you have more trim and more speed bar, it's going to be more dynamic when things happen. If you've got a reflex wing and you're using brakes, then you're adding to the risk by using brakes when it's accelerated. If you're flying it the way the manufacturer says, which is probably to use tip steering, it's probably not an issue to be partially accelerated. Another thing, my observation is that they test the wings, and really it's just a couple guys writing about their experiences. This is not rocket science. And, we've seen some things. We've seen some behaviors that nobody saw coming. So it's probably best not to push envelopes that aren't well explored, especially for newer pilots who aren't going to be adept at handling the consequences.
But to add to that, I was surprised at how much of the manual was actually just a copy paste from previous manuals. When I read them, sometimes I think that this is the Bible for this wing. This is stuff that they really tested and put a lot of effort into. That's not necessarily true. There were search and replace errors in the freeride manual when it first came out, and I was like, whoa. Anyway,
believe me, I've seen that plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how it is. Here's the thing: is I think that most wings are modifications of existing wings, or they'll look at one that's already out there and successful. And I don't know this. I'm not a builder. We should get a builder on the show. Really, it'd be interesting. And so they make tweaks and they go try them. And how much do they try them? Well, that depends. How well does it do? And then when they do the manual, well, it's pretty much like that model. Most of the stuff seems to behave like that model. So we don't need to rewrite this from scratch. Let's keep all these sections that are the same and then only change the areas of the wing that change. So I know what you mean.
Very interesting.
Can I ask a question?
Bring
Absolutely.
it.
Jeff, what are you flying, wing and motor wise, and why'd you choose it?
I fly. Oh boy, there's a variety there because I got a Silex at home. I'll fly the Silex. Yeah, see, we talked about that. I have flown the Silex within the last year. I primarily fly an Ozone 18, but that was my competition wing from probably 2009.
An Ozone what 18?
Oh, I'm sorry, a Viper, but it's the Viper 1, so it's kind of old school.
Yeah.
But you know what happened was I saw Matthew Rowanay, world-class pilot, way better than me, of course, and I saw him put that thing through some amazing paces, flying through his wake, flying in some conditions. He worked with me on Master PPG 2 and 4, probably and some of 3, and he was the consummate professional. He was awesome to work with, great pilot. We went out one time to this site in California, southeast of the Salton Sea, and it was pretty turbulent. It was windy and it was pretty turbulent, and I asked him, Matthew, do you want to do these shots? We were filming slider landings, the technique that you use to maximize the slider landing. What goes into that? So Matthew was going to go out and show that. It's like, are you okay with this much wind? Yeah, I'm all right. So he did it. And those shots, they're in the video. It doesn't talk about how nasty it is, but you can kind of get an idea watching it. So afterwards, I thought, well, I haven't flown today. I guess I had flown, but I haven't flown here at this site. It was a really cool site. Some kind of 70s community is out there, like a bunch of hippies. I forget the name of it, but it's really a cool site. I wanted to fly it. I asked, you mind if I take your rig? It's already there and ready. And he said, sure. Oh my goodness. I took one run around and I wanted out of that air. I wanted no part of that air. And he'd just been up there filming. Not so. So anyway, after he did that, I thought, that's the wing I want to compete with. Because when I was going to compete at the World Air Games, I was trying out this wing. And I'm not going to say the model because it was a great wing in most regards, but it was definitely not good for the cloverleaf. Because almost every time I'd fly through the center, on the center of a cloverleaf, you're on full speed bar, full power, full speed bar, and I'd take a big collapse. And of course, you have to kick the center stick, which is 6 feet high. So you're taking that big collapse at 6 feet on full speed bar. And after a few of those, I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. I want something that has been through that, and it came out of the washing machine still intact. And that was this Ozone Viper, the Viper 1. The Viper's gone through a lot of changes. I don't know how it would be in that role. I would want to defer to the people that are doing competition right now, if that's how you want to fly. So that's another one.
You call that your primary wing, the Viper 1?
That's my primary wing. But I'm ready to settle down, let's say, because the Viper 1 at 18, when you're up at a little bit of altitude, that's a run.
You're a light man, right? 150.
Yeah, I weigh about 150, a little under that. And that's an 18, and my motor, it's a mini plane. I've been flying the mini plane for years. Between Tim and I, we have 4 of them. And that's nice because it has fleet commonality. Because you remember how to tell if your paramotor's about to break, right?
It's running.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have spare parts. It's always very good. And being lightweight, it's enough power for me. Because, you only get 95 to 105 pounds of thrust. I get it. That's not enough for a lot of people, especially if you like to do acro. I don't do acro, so I don't need that much power. About the only thing I like to do is I'll do some steep-ish wingovers and full power turns low to the ground. But, as long as you're not so low the wingtip will catch on something, that's really pretty safe. So, but I just flew yesterday. I flew Tim's 19 Sirocco. And here's the thing about it. It's got that lightweight. I don't know. I think it's a 2.
Okay.
From maybe 2 years ago. I think he got it.
Oh,
and the site that I flew yesterday there was some let's just say there was some tightness involved. Now, I chickened out on most of the tightness, but the other thing is that lightweight fabric, it comes up so easy. It's embarrassing. I told that to Tim, it's like, if I blow a launch with this thing, yeah, probably ought to give me a little penalty time or something. I don't know. But, that's a nice thing to have it inflate. Why not look good? Because let's face it, every now and then, I know we would never do this intentionally, of course, but every now and then you wind up with a little tailwind. There we go. Little tailwind. And what do you want? You want a dog? Or you want a wing that just kind of pops open and pops up? I like pop open, pop up. So the other wing is the Nivea Doberman, which, by the way, is my favorite handling wing. I really like how the Doberman handles. And I've got a 16 and a 18. The only thing about the Doberman is in no wind. I mean, honest to goodness, no wind. It has this inflation practice that's really weird, where it kind of comes up like this and then eventually, but your launch drill is, in my case, I throttle to about a quarter, just get the motor at a steady thrust, it's clean thrust, and then start running, and you don't feel anything for a while, like maybe a second or two. You're just running, you don't feel anything, and then it pops, and now you deal with however it came up, because it probably came up a little bit crooked. So that's a little bit of a struggle. It's more work, and I wouldn't really be that thrilled about flying it in the 16 in, honest to goodness, zero wind, because that'll be interesting.
You don't worry about the Doberman's dangerous reputation?
Yes, it does have a bit of history, and as a consequence of that history, I don't use full speed bar and full trim with the, I'm getting old and mellow in my years. So now I'll trim it fast, but I won't engage the PK system or whatever they call it. I call it speed trimmer interface also. And I won't go to full speed bar. So there's a little confusion between the new wing and the old wing about whether or not, like on the new wing, I actually do have a newer model. I think that's the 16. And they say that it should be flown with that speed trimmer system in place.
You're talking about the Doberman too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just
killed my friend.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. He has video of it. I could show it to you, but I won't fly it.
Yeah. Well, I think the key is don't fly it accelerated.
I think you're right. Yeah, he was accelerated.
Yeah. All of the bad things seem to be while accelerated. So, I don't know if people are still competing with it, but I think they are. And maybe you just have to be that much better of a pilot. You got to know it inside and out. And you know what? Let's face it, for competition, you better know your game, because there are some flight modes where those wings don't behave well. And you better not do them accidentally, because you're going to do them at 3 feet.
That leads into a question that a bunch of people are interested in the chat. And this is the question. Sorry, let me pull this up. Ask Jeff to describe the key differences in ENA A, B, and C wings and how they're tested to decide where the wing belongs. And I know this answer, but a bunch of people are interested in that.
Well, number one, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on the topic. But I'll give you my understanding. And we all know what the testing is. The testing on an ENA wing, they induce a collapse. They do a lot of things, but the main one that I think people are talking about is that they induce a collapse. They do other maneuvers, and then they let go and see how it recovers. How long does it take to come out of a spiral? How long does it take to come out of an induced collapse? And you can look at the tests online. I don't remember them all. And the A wings come out faster. They may or may not be harder to get into the collapse. I don't think that's tested, but it's about how they come out. So you want a wing that comes out quickly. But there's a lot more to it. I remember an ENA wing that, yeah, it tested as an ENA wing. It would come out of a collapse quickly, but it was very dynamic in handling. Well, you look at the history of these crashes, and a lot of times they happen because students are put on small wings with dynamic handling. And I don't know that that's tested. So you can make an ENA wing that has really good handling. And the problem is that everybody says, oh, it's got great handling. It's an ENA wing and it's got great handling. Well, that's cool once you're in it and you know what you're doing. But for the new guy that does what every student tends to do and get into pilot-induced oscillations, that can go very poorly. And we have to remember that in 2015, there were 2 fatalities with a student on radio, and that was a factor. Pilot-induced oscillation was a factor. So if you're getting into the sport, don't go for the hot wing. Go for the wing that you'll survive with.
That's good advice right there. You don't know what you don't know.
Bingo.
The rating's not everything too. Like the Jin Carrera comes to mind. I'm sure Jeff is familiar with the story. Am I pronouncing that wing name right? Carrera?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when that thing came out, they were targeted to be an ENC wing. That was what the designers had in their head. They were going to ENC standards and ENC worthy pilots. And then it passed all the B tests. So it's an ENB wing. Well, the thing is, pilots who weren't ready for a C were buying it. Pilots who belonged on a B were buying it because it passed those tests. And people were dying. People died because it was a wing worthy of an ENC class pilot, but Bs were buying it and they weren't ready for it.
You know, one of the aspects of the higher performance wings, in my observation, is that when they hit a gust, they'll dart quickly forward, and you have to react to that sometimes with a lot of brake. It would be fun to watch an experienced pilot in really strong turbulence and see how much brake they use every now and then. It's not much most of the time, because a really experienced good pilot, they'll know exactly how much to do. And I think the best way to describe someone who knows what they're doing is using the least amount of control input required to do the job. But every now and then, that's a lot. And if you're on a wing like what you just described, it's probable that it's pretty dynamic in handling. And the experienced pilot can stop it from collapsing, whereas the inexperienced pilot just may not be ready for that much control input. And the problem is they may not know when to do that much control input, because it's rare. When it needs it though.
Gosh, that was so well said. That needs to be in writing. That's perfect. That's exactly what I've been thinking, but I can't. That's perfect. That's exactly what the problem is. You get into a wing. That's what I did. I got into a wing that I wasn't ready for, and I ended up in a very peculiar position over Palomar Mountain at like 6,000 feet.
Yeah.
Face down spiral. When I recovered, I went back into it, going the opposite direction. It was a 1 minute of terror because I was on a wing that I over corrected over. Yeah.
How did that impact you afterwards? Like,
it took me about a week to recover to where I was like, and I say a week, like maybe 5 flying episodes where I got more comfortable. I was way more aware, because up until that point I was just having a blast.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, we're doing this. This is real now. And what's capable.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the observation that just because you succeeded doesn't mean it was safe. And I mean, I have been there, so I know what you mean.
I got a thing going on right now. It wasn't me really. So I was flying. This was Monday, and you guys know Ross, right? He's in my videos. I fly with him a lot.
The Blue Wing,
Blue Spider. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect day. Let's take 3-5 minutes. So It was one of those like happens 5 times a year kind of beautiful sunset type days. And we're out there, we're an hour into the flight, and Ross spots, we call it an obstacle course, but think of it as a maze, a farm with trees forming like columns that you can fly through and dart in and out and such. And he spots it and he's like, we should go down there and fly around. And it was like, yeah, we should. And he goes in there and starts flying around, and I did a pass, and he's like, all right, sun's setting. We should probably go home now. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You know what? But it's so perfect. I'm going to do one more pass around. And he joins me. That's when he hit the power line. And I didn't see it happen, but we have radio. We have comms, 2-meter radios. And he's like, all I hear is, Woody, I fucked up. Sorry. And
$10, you sucker.
That's still 20.
It's a quote though. Anyway, he fouled up, and I know Ross, right? Like, I know something bad.
When did this happen?
Monday. And
no way.
It's not what he would say if he got lost or something. Like, I knew that it was a problem. So I do a few passes and I find him there. He's exited his motor, but he's laying flat on the ground with his helmet on and stuff. And it took me longer than I wanted to get to him. There were some power lines and there was a road, and I just needed to do a couple rounds to figure out the wind direction and land with him. So I don't know, 5 minutes later, I'm on the ground next to him, and there are bystanders that had watched it happen. Even after I landed, he still hadn't really moved, right? He was on the ground, and Ross has some first responder experience. He used to be one of those scuba diver guys that jumps out of the helicopters and saves powerboat problems. And so he was, yes, a little more like able to do like a self-check, a diagnosis, right? Fingers, toes, or whatever he's doing. And he's kind of hurt. He doesn't want to stand. He's taking his time on all of this. And like I said, there's 2 bystanders. They're helping. We're sort of carrying his gear. I'm a little freaked out. Like, I'm on edge as this is going down. And I checked his wing and his motor. Like, that matters. I'm like, all right, yeah, frame might be a little bent. Wing's got a hole here. Right? Worried about spinal injuries. And I'm worried about wings. Like, I'm an idiot. So he's walking and he's like, I think I'm okay. And long story short, we come up with the plan that I'm going to launch, head back home, get the truck, and retrieve him. I nearly blow my launch. I'm kind of, not the best version of me as I do this, but I hit the launch, and the whole ride home, I don't even let the trimmers out, right? And if you guys don't know me, I'm a pretty, maybe a bold pilot, right? And on this flight back, I'm like, this thing's working at trim speed. Let's not touch it. I'm nervous. I'm worried about my landing, right? I'm not a super experienced pilot, maybe 315 hours. And, but I'm a guy who hits his landings. Like, I'm worried about this, but yeah, I'm worried about it. And I come in and I land and I get the truck and I come back to him. And at that point, like, some of the adrenaline's wearing off and like some of the pain is setting in. He's walking, but super gingerly. And he's hurt. We're waiting on MRIs, but he's been to a spinal doctor and a regular doctor in the ER. Nothing's broken, but something's fouled up. No money on that one. And
that sucks, man.
Yeah, he stayed in my guest house until today, actually. And we just sort of, took him to the doctors and fed him and whatnot. But he's hurt for now. And since the story is really about me, I watch another podcast, Cloud-Based Mayhem. Maybe some of you guys have heard of it, with Gavin. What's his last name?
McClurg.
McClurg. I can't stop calling him McCloud because I'm pretty sure that's from The Simpsons. But no,
McCloud is the correction when Apple corrects your spelling.
Okay. So he has this thing that he talks about in a few of his episodes called a fear injury.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I told my story of the broken leg from just over a year ago. I didn't have any fear injury from that at all. Maybe I'm a slow learner, but I just watched acro videos and dreamt of a rematch. I want those conditions that day again. Yeah. I want to come back better and improved. But with Ross's injury, it said, I can picture there's a burn mark in his wing from the power line. It's,
wow, no way.
Yeah, and like crispy nylon on the edge of the hole.
Did he get shocked?
Not that we know of.
Will it transfer through? Jeff, I know you've had a couple incidents, small incidents, right? You shared that. You mentioned that you've had a couple things that, maybe talk about that. I don't want to. He's just using his data. He's out in the middle of nowhere. I told him we would keep it short, but maybe talk about that. How do you recover from that? How do you, and then what can we do to avoid those kind of?
Have you had a fear injury? You're muted right now, Jeff. Have you seen it?
Thank you for reminding me. I don't think I had. Where what it did to me when I've had a few things, but thankfully I never got hurt seriously from them. The kiting one was the worst. And I remember thinking mostly, how do I avoid it? Clearly I didn't do enough there. So how do I avoid it? And I guess I stopped flying only because I needed to heal. And then once I was healed, I went back to flying and kiting, but with more caution. I wonder if it involves, like, for example, when that happens with the power lines, if you realize that you are 2 possibilities away from fatal, because you get burned. I don't know how many people know Alan Cioccolati in a hang glider trike. He died from being burned. He went into power lines. So it's more serious. So maybe that triggers it. The one that I had, in fact, I wish Phil Russman, he could talk about this. The worst flight I've ever had in anything in my life was a flight in Mexico, where I got talked into flying into the lee of a mountain. And that was horrible. I mean,
wait, how'd that happen? Who talked you into that?
It was a cross country that we were doing in stages. We would fly, refuel, press on, and the next leg looked like it was going to be behind this mountain. And the local pilot, I don't want to give names. They're great pilots and great people and good friends. So the one of the pilots said, "Hey, Jeff," because I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm just going to ride in the back of the truck on this segment." And so the kind of the organizer said, "Hey, listen, here's the local on the phone. Talk to the local about it." And the local told me that, this condition happens a lot, but we land there successfully all the time. It's not a problem. So, all right, I'll go. I mean, I don't know the area. He knows what the conditions are. I'll buy that. And Phil Russman was on this. And Phil Russman, while we were flying, we're pointing towards the mountain. Silence on the radio. We're all on the radio. And Phil says, "Guys, this is folly," or something to that effect. And we press on. Nobody was willing to pull the trigger because it would have been a difficult trigger. I think the retrieve would have been challenging at some points of that. And so we pressed on, and then we got into turbulence that was just horrific. Pilot one, the organizer, decided that what happened was we got into the lee of the mountain. We got into wave and rotor action from the mountain. It was true rotor where you were going up so much you couldn't get down. I'd spot Big Ears just ticked it off. Big Ears, really? Like I'm going to notice that? And I'm too chicken to do a beeline. So I would do a pretty close to nose over spiral, but not for very long. It wasn't nose over, but it was pretty close, and it was a really fast descent rate. But then I'd come out of it into a 700 foot a minute climb. So I'm on a 22-meter wing, Spice, which is a fairly efficient wing. Phil is on a 25-meter spice. Well, he weighs the same as me, but his descent rate's that much lower. So we all took different tacks to get out of that, but I was never that happy to be on the ground.
Yeesh.
And so my solution, I'm talking about in anything I've ever flown, my solution was, you know what? Don't get talked into things. If you don't like it, just don't do it. Ride the bus. Ride the bus more often.
Do you ever come away from those, Jeff, thinking, damn, I'm really good. Look what I just handled. Or darn, I'm really lucky. How'd I get out of that?
That one. Because basically I know better. I mean, I look at some of these experienced pilots who have things happen and they're really good pilots and it still happens.
Mm-hmm.
I know better. I know that it can happen to me. I'm not immune to any of this stuff. I've had enough close calls, I guess. And it's kind of like Eric DeFore.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he's exceptional at what he does. And for the most part, he sticks within those boundaries of, I'm good at these things. But, you know, the really good pilots, they're always expanding those boundaries. And in the beginning, Eric was one of those guys. He was expanding those boundaries. So you take risks. I mean, unfortunately, that's in our sport. It's unlike the airlines where the job is to deliver the cargo safely. In our sport, it's to have fun. It's a different trade.
Yeah. I want to put a quick plug in. We actually have a sponsor for the show now. The sponsor is Para Orange Products. Larry and Chris make the stuff sacks and a bunch of stuff that you can use for your paramotoring and paragliding. Go get your gear. You can check out paraorangeproducts.com, and there's a link in the description. And also you can check out our website to find details about their store. It's paraglidingtalk.com, where you can find all the upcoming shows. Next week's show is going to be with the famous, you guys know who it is? Does anybody know? Next week, Mark Honeycutt is going to be on next week.
You couldn't get a better guest, I guess.
It's going to be fun.
My condolences.
He's going to be on.
Slow that week.
You need to get Elena. She's going
to be on too.
Oh yeah,
she is.
Watch. Mark will just offload all the talking to her. That's how it's going to go down.
I said the same.
You heard it here first.
No, I talked to Mark. I said the same thing. I said,
hey, also, I forgot to mention, what is it? The 14th, is it? Where the San Diego swoop?
Yes.
You want to, if anybody who's in the area can get there, there's going to be some paramotor flying at, I think it's about 2 o'clock. And then that's on Friday, 2 o'clock, and Saturday at 10:20. Some really great pilots are going to be putting on a show. And there'll be, I would guess, thousands of people watching that whole thing. The swoop is fun to watch on its own. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to help do some announcing and just help with it.
That's awesome. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were going to make it. So please, let's connect.
We'll do. We'll love to.
Okay, yeah, I have something special for you if we do connect. That would be awesome. Okay. Jeff, we're at that 1 hour mark. I really appreciate you coming on. I don't want to burn up any more of your data.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I do want to do it again. You
Absolutely.
are one of the more demanded of. So last week when we didn't get the full Jeff going, they mandated that I had you on again. And so I would love it if you would come again, and we can set that up sometime in the future, maybe when you've got some time. And
it was fun. I'd be happy to. They might not say that now that I'm doing this close up. We'll see.
Yeah. You're awesome, man. Thank you so much. Have a safe trip. I will see you then in a week.
We'll look forward to it. Okay.
We'll have a great time. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you, man.
Okay. We'll see you.
So again, thank everyone for watching, all the great questions in the comments. Thank you for participating. There's just been an outpouring of support. Some of you guys have been really going above and beyond on the Patreon. I love it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you showing up each week and participating in something that I love flying. It's so fun. And I know you guys do too. And so you guys are great. Let's keep it rolling. So next week, Mark Honeycutt, and the following weeks we'll have some great shows lined up. I'm pretty excited about that.
You hear how he did that? Next week, Mark Honeycutt, but after that,
Yeah.
great shows.
I'm just trying to think. I don't know who it is yet.
Uh,
Actually, I haven't locked it down yet. I literally have blanks in the lineup for that following week. There's Todd. I don't know who it is yet. So anyways, I really appreciate everybody. We're going to go to the post show. And again, make sure that you're safe. And if I don't see you in the air, I'll see you on the air. See you next week. Have a great night.